And we're live.
Yes. Hi, Dave. Welcome.
You too.
I spent the pre-chat explaining to Dave how casual and chaotic this show usually is. So
I'm good with casual. I'm good with chaotic as well.
I mean, it keeps us fun, I have to say.
It does, yeah. I like that, yeah. Cool.
So let's start off with the boring question. And people are like, it's not Dave Algeo, so it's Dave Algeo. Who is Dave?
Yeah.
Oh, is it Algeo?
Algeo. It's one of those names. I know. I get everything from Algeria to Alka-Seltzer, so don't worry about it. It's Algeo. I've been called a lot worse. In my police career, I've been called a lot worse.
Yeah.
In fact, it was a sergeant that used to call me Sergeant Alka-Seltzer.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he's just joking or was because the effect I had on my team. I'm not sure. So Dave Algeo. I am a coach working with midlifers who are really at that point where I guess they're going, is this it? is this it? I'm working hard, I'm burning the candle, whatever end. I'm feeling like I'm putting everything into life, but I've lost a bit of myself, even my health, whatever it is, out, in the process. And really come to that realization that there's more years behind than in front. And how do I shift that? So that's pretty much it. So I work on that kind of area of reclaiming your health, reclaiming a spirit of adventure, in your life. And background for that, before that, was speaking and training around stress, and previous as a police officer as well.
So you're with the right show, because I think we're about that midlife. Are we, Tim, is that us? Are we the midlife?
Midlife and stress, yeah, that's cool.
So we could use, that's really why we invited you here. We need some help. I keyed in on a couple of things. You have a previous life as a police officer. So how does that play into now this new thing that you do? How does that help? How does that play in? And maybe how did that inspire this?
Yeah, I always like to say that it wasn't something I wanted to be when I grew up. I didn't want to be a police officer when I grew up. I kind of bimbled into the job because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I still don't, I guess. But in the course of doing the job, I enjoyed it, but had those ups and downs. Throughout that time, there's a point where I realized this isn't me. It's not, after 7 years plus, whatever. It took a long time for me to escape the police, as I like to think about it. And it took 2 attempts, actually. But the reason was because I was so financially tied into the job, which is one of the reasons I'm particularly fascinated with the midlifer, because we often have a lot of responsibilities, commitments that take a bit of untangling. But what really struck me in my time is that, we human beings have this amazing capacity to cope. And we all have a breaking point, don't get me wrong, but that capacity to cope is amazing, but it can also be our undoing, because it's how we cope, what we do in order to cope, that always fascinated me. So, for me, alcohol and silence, shut the F up, were the strategies for coping. Now, they're coping strategies, but they're just not very good ones.
Yeah.
And that's always stayed with me. And it wasn't until I started to think, right, what else do I want to do? And then I got into running my own business, had the most stressful year of my life after escaping the police the first time, crashed and burned, then went back to the police to sort of get a solid income while I rebuilt my business. This was along like 2007, 2008. So that stress experience shaped this idea that actually I've got ambitions and goals and things I want to do, but what got in the way were the realities, the stresses, the demands of life, plus the stuff I was doing in here, because I was horrible to myself in there, with perfectionism, hard on myself. I call it self-sabotage. We'll get on the cabbages, I'm sure, but self-sabotage, stuff I did to myself in here. And that's what really shaped me doing what I'm doing, because it's really about how do you manage this and yourself more kindly and deal with the realities of life without sacrificing your responsibilities, but shape your life the way you want it to be, or at least more towards that direction. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of what...
Well, that's the show done. Yeah, that's the show. I mean, it's interesting because I think when did you start your business? Were you in your 40s when you started your business? Or
34. I'm 52 now, so it's 2006. 2006. Did a year running it whilst I was in the training department of the police, and then left and had the year, just a bad year, 2006 to 7. So...
because I mean, I was kind of similar in that I gave up work. I used to work in financial IT when I was about 41, 2-ish. And I certainly sympathise with the whole stress thing. I mean, I think what a lot of people don't appreciate is when you start working for yourself, everybody thinks you're not doing anything. B, you end up just all the time, you're either working or you're stressed about not working.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, like, obviously you had that experience and you ended up going back to the police because it got so bad. But what did you realize when you were doing it the second time about how to overcome that issue of stress when you are running and starting a business? And also how you were like now factoring that into the whole middle age thing. Obviously not every person in middle age is starting a business. So
no, I think it's a good question. I think that year culminated in sort of scrapping around for £2 behind the back of the couch to pay the mortgage, so I didn't go into arrears. So it was a point where I thought, this is ridiculous. And I was also felt very isolated. So the second time round, when I started it, because I built it while I was working part-time, then full-time, because I was it's such a financial hole for a while, I had to go back full-time in the police. So I was working shifts. So I built it around my days off. And I the lessons I learned, I guess, was this idea of burn your bridges and just jump and build your wings on the way down type thing. You only hear about the people who are successful in that. And if, I did that, but I forgot to go to the shop and buy the materials to build the wings. You know what I mean? I just didn't have a clue. I didn't know how to run a business, how to sell. I didn't have clients. I didn't have a network. So I jumped completely clueless. So that the years after was about, right, okay, I do want to do this. I don't want to stay where I'm at. So let's build firstly my network so that I'm not as isolated. And I think that's really important for anybody in business. But I think anybody at work, especially the way we're working now, let's be right. You could spend time sitting staring at a Zoom or a Teams or whatever, and you might be talking to people, but you still feel lonely. So it's where's your network, where's your support? And really start to learn the basics of business and go back to the basics, strip it back, sales. And in terms of the stress, I guess it was build the foundations and be real, because there's always stress, and that's in business and in life. It's not about eliminating stress or the demands or responsibilities. It's about learning how you roll with some of the punches, how you anticipate some of them and eliminate them before they come, and how you manage yourself in that process. So I'm not saying I'm perfect by a long shot. I'm a work in progress, but I think the key things were network, really sort of tie into the basics and not get carried away with, I don't know about you, but in businesses, you should do this, you should be on that, you have this, you have to do that, and you're all over the place. And I kind of stripped a lot of that back and just went, right, stick to the basics. And I only do it if it earns its way back onto the business. Like, if it's going to add some bit value to it, I'll bring it back in. But if not, I'm just going to stick to the core. And that helps shed a bit of the stress as well, So I don't know if that answers the question. But I suppose the second part is midlife is, how does it tie in? I think because of the conversations I had over the years, it isn't just people in business. It's lots of people in all sorts of professions working. It feels like so much harder. So much is expected, being wrung out, and juggling responsibilities, family, kids, staying at home longer, perhaps university, caring for older parents. All of these things are wringing people out, and you can lose yourself in that and feel like you're a cog rather than a human being. So part of it is the similar process, right? Let's strip it back and let's look at what are the basics. Let's establish a direction of travel. I like to think about, rather than a definite specific goal. Let's think about where you would like to take your life, and let's start to navigate the ship that way, So that's kind of the approach.
Yeah.
So you became a midlife coach. Where do we start with this? Who is your best client? Who are you looking for, and who can benefit the most? And where do we start with this?
Well, the midlife thing, I guess, is more because I often joke it's not necessarily an age thing, because it could range from 30s to 50s plus whatever, but it's often a state of a place you get to in your head. So midlife, it could be, you could be early 30s or mid 50s, whatever. But that midlife point where you get to thinking, is this it? I am working really hard. I've let my health go. I feel like I'm just not enjoying it. I'm not fulfilled in what I'm doing. I've lost my sense of self. So the ideal client would be somebody like perhaps a business owner who's running business, let's be right, it is full on. And it's very easy to lose yourself in that. Or a professional who's in a similar position, carrying lots of responsibilities, and is at the point where they've maybe I think this is the key distinction feature for me, because I know I often focus on people who want to improve their health. For me, that's a starting point for many, because that's the first thing you notice that has gone. You know, you go up a flight of stairs and suddenly think, geez, man, you know, that kind of thing. That's a starting point. But if you are in a place where you can take on a fitness trainer or go to a gym and follow a diet, then, and that works, you don't need me, because I'm not, I don't talk about diets per se or exercise plans. You know, it factors into conversations, but I don't recommend any particular. I talk about the other stuff. So it's perhaps typically people who've tried it, maybe successfully lost a lot of weight, got their life back in order, then something's changed. I've got somebody who lockdown was actually a good time for them, in the sense that they actually got their life back in order, lost a lot of weight, felt like they were really doing well. But after lockdown, it went back to the chaotic kind of world that we're living in. So, and that feeling, it's not just the doing it again, it's the feelings of, God, how rubbish am I? I'm useless. What have I done to myself? I did it. And what have I done to myself now? It's that kind of stuff that I love to work with people on, because if you've been around the mill a few times, you've got a lot of baggage saying, how crap are you, because you've done it and failed so many times. So for me, that's where, to me, is where the work is, and where I love to work with people on.
It sounds like you get people when they feel stuck. And, and perhaps what I'm hearing you say, I think, is that the physical follows the mental. And so that's why you start with the mental. Is that am I hearing that right?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I suppose I have a rough structure to the program, but obviously you individualize it. But it's usually because somebody's in a place where something's happened. It might be a health issue, it might be a weight issue, or it might be a real stress burnout issue. So there's the emotional and the physical. But what we'll start with is just getting a few ducks in order, just starting to clear the head a little bit. So there is an element of clearing out stuff out of our heads. Then start to get a bit of a picture. What would you like it to be? So I would talk about sort of, what are your fears and frustrations? Where are you at now? What are you worried about? And then what are your hopes and aspirations? So the hopes and aspirations are kind of trying to then look, right, what would you like? And then we start to shift. And I like to start with some practical things, practical plans. I call it the cabbage slice and sprout plan. It's basically, what's your vision, what's the areas, and what's the habits, rituals, and routines you're going to do to move you in the right direction. So we start practically, but inevitably when you start moving, you hit the head stuff, the stuff, the self-doubt, the self-criticism. And that's when we start to get into the stories we tell ourselves, you know. So it's a mix, really, but often kind of trying to get some practical wins with the practical side of things. Then you get into the real stuff, if you like.
Okay, so let's go back to stress, because we all like stress. Stress, really. But why do you think in today's world people are so stressed? What are the biggest factors that cause people to feel so much stress? And also, I suppose it's worth asking the question, what does stress do to people in a negative way?
Yeah, okay, so I'll probably answer the second one first.
Okay.
Because stress, we talk about that word. I often like to step away from it, because we talk about the stress response. You know, it's that evolved mechanism that's designed or evolved to keep you out of bother, keep you safe, you know, fight or flight. And it's evolved to really deal with an acute incident, whether it's a threat from a saber-tooth tiger or something, you know, something threatening, that's life-threatening. So we've adapted reasonably well to deal with that. Where we struggle is the psychological stresses, and when they become chronic. So when we are dealing with the things that we have now, like, you know, just too much to do in too little time, worrying about somebody else that we love, worrying about our own health, you know, financially, whatever the things are, they're not a saber-tooth tiger. And it's like we're on, like the world is on version 10 and we're still on version 1 of the app. We're amazing, but we haven't adapted our stress response and all that to version 10 to cope with it. So the misalignment really is in the psychological strain and the emotional strain. And I prefer strain to stress as a word. There's less baggage around that word, to be fair. We've all felt the strain, you know, even if we've done some exercise, you've felt physical strain, but we've all felt psychologically strained and just head, you know, steam coming out of our ears. So when we experience that, as a one-off, a challenge here and there, that can be good for us because some sort of adversity and whatever can help develop resilience. We get through it, we look and go, oh, I've been through that, look what I learned. So if we can pick that up when we go, but often what we're finding now, and then many people can probably relate, is there doesn't seem to be a break. It's constant. And as you were saying, why is it now? I guess there's lots of reasons, but there is the worries we have over financial, maybe economy. There's the media, the social media, the pressures to be this, comparison, the rising cost of living. There's lots of things that are probably keeping different people up in the night for different reasons. But that psychological strain over time starts to take its toll, and as it takes its toll, it starts to affect us. Well, physically, emotionally, and psychologically, and it can deteriorate down, and we then try to cope, because what we try to do is get back to an equilibrium.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, or to block out the stuff, we do other things, and that might be alcohol, it might be food, it might be work harder, it might be denial, it might be silence, it could be anything,
Yeah.
Dave, you showed us some vegetables.
Yes.
We have to ask about this because the first thing Tim said to me was something about you talking about vegetables. So tell us about your vegetables and how this plays into your coaching.
Right, yes. And I've mentioned the cabbage sprout, so I guess I've got to give the context for it. Yeah. When I started focusing in on stress as a speaker and a trainer, I was doing a lot of reading and research. Having been through a lot myself, I just thought I need to understand it. And there was a metaphor or a visual that jumped out at me when I was reading about it. And I'm dating myself here, and you may not get the reference, Christelle, but it's from a kids program called Crackerjack, which is a UK kids program. It was on the telly a few years back.
Quite a few years back. I mean, I remember it. I mean, it was old when I.
All right. Let's go 10 years back. Yeah. But Crackerjack was a kids program where they get loads of kids into a studio, and it was chaos. And I'm sure there's loads of these kinds. There'd be custard pies. They'd be dropping slime on each other. But there was a great game on there called Cabbages and Kings, and they get a few kids up on stage, and they'd be asked questions, and if they got a question right, they get a prize. And they get a toy, like a fire engine or something. If they got it wrong, they get a cabbage, and a bigger cabbage than this, to be fair. This is just a plastic one. But they get a cabbage, and you would, every time you got a question wrong, you get another cabbage. And the idea was to not drop anything. And if you got 3 cabbages, you were out. So you'd whittle down to the last kid who's carrying this pile of stuff, desperately trying not to drop anything, because they wanted to win all the prizes, So that visual was really powerful for me, and I've since used it loads of times in sessions and speaking, because the cabbages represent the negative demands or the goals that we set ourselves that require some hard work. Like I want to run a marathon, I'm going to have to, that's a cabbage, albeit it's a positive one, there's a lot of hard work involved. So I'm carrying a lot of these cabbages around, and the cuddly toys or the toys represent the positives in life, because positive things are demanding. Like playing the guitar, that's a positive for me. I still have to find time. Sometimes it feels like a chore, that kind of stuff. And what happens is, if we get too many cabbages in life, it crushes the cuddly toys or the positives. We start to lose sight of them, because they're usually the things we'll put down. I'll do that later when I've got more time, or I can't be bothered to go out tonight, I'm knackered, or I need to work. And we're carrying loads and loads of the negative demands, and we can end up getting burned out, because the weight of them, the psychological weight of all of this stuff, these stresses, it just burns us out, So that's where the cabbages came in. And the sprouts basically is to come into, how do we deal with them? Well, what we do is we chunk the cabbages into sprout-sized chunks, and we sweat the sprouts, because your brain doesn't like to deal with cabbages. It would rather put them off till they get smelly, but it can handle sprout-sized things, actions. So that's kind of the approach at a very sort of fast, quick level.
Yeah, I remember you had Amanda Webb on stage, and with sprouts, and I think you were demonstrating that. I don't remember any cuddly toys. Did you have cuddly toys as well?
Yeah, cuddly toys on it. That's a good point, isn't it? Because you can lose sight of cuddly toys, because the cabbages are the things that stand out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, the trouble is, I'm now screwed up the alternating questions thing, because me and Christelle have got this thing where we alternate questions, but I don't know if that counts as a question or not.
The cuddly toys.
Cuddly toys. We got a comment from somebody.
He knows you, Tim. He's your fan. Raju.
Yeah, quite a big fan from India. Oh, I think I might have worked with him actually a long time ago. But anyway, Now I've got to think of a new question. Oh no, terrible. What would you say? Because I mean, I face this, and I'm sure maybe you face this in the police. I'm not sure if you left early enough, but most people, if they're in full-time career, so they don't start their own business, they don't do anything. Most people get to a certain level where they realise that they've got promoted as far as they're ever going to get promoted. How do you help people come to terms with that? Because when you were younger in a corporate environment, I mean, there are some people who just get on one level and that's it, and they never get promoted, and they've got no hope of promotion. Fair enough. But for most people, they get promoted up, and then gradually the promotions get less and less and less. How do you help people with that whole? They've gone as far as they can in their career.
Well, funny enough, I remember making a decision about in my career that I got a sergeant and I was being like pushed to do the accelerated promotion, that kind of thing, and I chose to step off. And I think it ties into possibly how, because I think firstly one question might be, what is it about promotion that you what's in it for you? What were you really after? Because we need to look at our motivations, and this goes back to the midlife thing, because how many of us have built a particular life direction and almost fallen into a pattern? And I was pressured to do that when I first joined. I got through my sergeant's exam quite quick. Like, you need to be on this, you need to be doing that, you need to be doing that. And I did a bit of that. And it wasn't until 7 years in I thought, hang on a minute, whose job is this? Who's like it? And I think many of us, because we then pick up responsibilities, the mortgage, the house, the family, commitments, status, we start to feel trapped and hemmed in. So sometimes there is only that one direction forward that we can see. So part of it is, if we can, and this can factor into the burnout, because that running against something and trying, and either because your heart's not in it, or there's too much content, whatever it is, or you really don't want to, but don't want to admit it to yourself, that can lead to more strain, can't it? Psychological strain. So it's basically coming back to where are you at? What is it? What were you looking in this for? What does it bring you? What's the whys? The old 5 whys exercise. So why is that important to you? And dig in a bit. Because sometimes they're holding themselves back and they're quite capable of achieving a position and they want it. It's just there's some self-sabotage going on. Other times it's not me anyway. I'm in this job, I'm doing this, and I'm not particularly enjoying it. So once they start to just realign and come to terms with that, and there's a little bit of letting go, and I guess I wouldn't say grief necessarily, but that kind of emotional, just let go of that, we can start to then think, right, so what do you want? Because part of this is, you get one run around at this, what would you like to do? What's really adventurous and fun and whatever, and let's see if we can shape that. And yes, there might be a bit of swallowing pride in the eyes of others and this status change. Okay, but deal with that. We can deal with that, and then move on.
I don't know if I have a question, but I have a comment, and I hope we all kind of have comments on this, because we are all about the same age. It is the midlife thing, and so many of us lived our life to build the career, like you're both talking about. We want to build the career. Then we get to now, and we look back and go, we built our career, but we forgot the adventure. We forgot what was our soul and our passion and our fire. And now what? And I don't have that much time left. I either do it now or I'm going to reach the end of my life and it's over. I don't know if I have a question about that, but everything you're saying kind of leads me to that. And I think maybe if I do have a question, it's more about the adventure. Because I really like that word adventure. Maybe the question is, where does the adventure come? At what point can we say it's time for that adventure or that fire or that everything that we thought that
5 years ago, I think you would say, isn't it?
What, Tim?
The best time to do that was 5 years ago. So.
Now it's too late. We can't go travel. We can't look,
Isn't that the interesting thing? Because for me, I like to reframe it, because people talk about midlife crisis, and firstly, I'm a bit funny about that phrase, because firstly, crisis means something different in my kind of past experience. So, and it's often become a bit of a joke, but there is a feeling like, oh my God, time is up. What's happening? But I often think, I think about X Factor. I don't know if you've watched this. You know, when you've got somebody on and they're in their 40s and say, "This is my last chance ever. It's my last shot at it," and all this stuff. And you think, no, it's not. Yes, you've got an opportunity here, but you can still, tomorrow you can choose something. Tomorrow. There's always another day. As long as we're still living and breathing, you know, it's never too late. So I like to try and frame it like that. Having said that, as you said there, Tim, you know, best time to plant a tree might have been whenever, 20 years ago, next time now, you know, let's get on with it. And adventure to me means a lot as a word, because that's the spirit of, for me, the restless midlife, you know, this title of my podcast, that kind of thing. It's about restlessness, not in a negative sense, but there is a spirit in us that's kind of, as a kid, you know, I used to watch Star Wars films and Star Trek, and I'm like, oh, I loved it. And then somewhere along the way, it just got crushed and put in a little box somewhere, so I could get on with the grown-up stuff and paying my bills and do a job, you know. And in some respects, what we need to do is just take a step and think, right, shaping this is about, what is that? What's that adventure about? Where is that? Can we open that box up again and let the spirit out, that little sense of what it is, you know, fun, belief in ourselves, just presence in the moment, whatever those things are, and rediscover it. So I think you're absolutely right. And that's really pretty much what in a way, the health is a kind of a Trojan horse, I guess, in some of the coaching, in the sense that it's what people come with first. And if we can get that, it moves into adventure, because you start to get energy, you start to feel more human again, you start to feel yourself again. Let's discover the next bit, because it gets better after that, you know.
Perhaps some of us just need the permission to allow ourselves to reclaim that adventure inside. We don't think we're allowed to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the self-cabotage, and I call it self-cabotage. It's the stuff
you got like TM trademark on that.
yeah, it's the stuff we tell ourselves, and if we take a moment to just go, hang on, who says that? And the answer is usually, well, somebody in my past life has said it was a parent, an influential person, or it's me. And if it's me, is that true? You know, because you're right. I mean, who says I can't have a little bit of adventure and reclaim that spirit? Who says? Yeah. It's me. It's me. Sort of slapping myself down. Right, let's deal with that. You know. So
very quickly, why the symbolism of the guitar in the corner? It's electric guitar, by the way.
Yeah.
Is that because you're learning to play the guitar? Are you gonna now go into guitar solo and play "Stairway to Heaven" on the show? We'll get kicked off YouTube for copyright violation.
No, don't ever worry about me. No, it's a good example of things, because I remember taking up the guitar years ago and getting to like an okay point. I was never going to be on stage or whatever, but an okay point where I could finger pick and play. But then child number 2, my son Thomas, came along, and you kind of put it down and you get on with life. And every so often I've picked it back up with a view to get back on with it. And I've got my ZX Spectrum somewhere around here. They're kind of reminders that this is what it's about. You know, I'm not going to be a rock star on the stage, but actually taking 10 minutes out to just go, hang on a minute, I'm more than just a coach or this or that or that. I'm going to do this for me. And I think if we can have little wins, that's where the sprout comes in, actually, the sprout sweating. If you can just start with some small little wins of reclaiming yourself, and often that's looking back to what you used to like to do, or love to do, or love to watch, read, listen to. Those little wins start to allow the box for your spirit of adventure just to open up a crack, you know, and let it look out and think, oh, wow, you know, that kind of thing. So for me, it symbolizes that, and it's a reminder that, you know, there's more to that. And it's pointless. You know, I'm not going to go on a stage. I'm not going to earn lots of money with it. But so what? It's indulgent. I love it. So why not?
What's one song that you love to play?
I'm learning. Oh, I love to play a couple, but I'm learning Closer to Fine by the Indigo Girls. Don't know if you know it. And it's a nice upbeat strum, acoustic strum. I'm not good with the strumming, so there's a bit of a challenge on that. But I do love that, because again, actually, when you listen to the lyrics and check it out on YouTube, I do encourage you. Closer to Fine by the Indigo Girls. There's actually, the lyrics are amazing, because it is about personal journey. So check it out after, you know. So I love the lyrics. I love that strum. So that's the song.
Okay. So how can we find out? Well, how can we obviously can find out about you? But I'm just messaging you. But how can people watching this show who think, oh my God, I need a midlife coach, or I want to hear Dave pronounce his surname again? How can people find out about you? Where can they go? Where can they contact you? Where can they get in touch with you? How can they give you lots of money and a knighthood or whatever they want to give you?
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, Sir Dave.
That's got a ring to it.
Yeah.
Dave Algeo on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn and do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I have the Restless Midlifer as a Facebook page and Restless Midlifer on Instagram, although I'm not as on there as much. But you can get in touch with me, Dave, at restlessmidlifer.com, and it's midlifer.com, Dave at restlessmidlifer.com. You can also check out the website, actually, midlifereshape.com as well.
Very cool. We'll put that in the comments, and our friends watching can scan the little code there. It'll pop up on Tim's website. So
and hopefully I'll update it to put all the right website and everything. Usually Twitter account and then something else until I update it after the show. I'll try and look up that song and the YouTube link as well. So.
Yeah.
You need to add the Indigo Girls now, Tim.
Yeah. I probably have heard of the song. There's lots of songs I've heard of, but I never quite know who actually does them.
Been around a while. I was quite surprised when I said it to my friends. I said, "Oh, you've not heard that one before."
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So who's going to close the show out? Me or Go
ahead, Tim.
Who would you prefer to close the show out?
I'll wave and you say goodbye, Tim.
He's not picking a side. He's that's
yes,
yeah. His police skills are like coming at these negotiations. Right? Not getting involved in this thing. He's police sergeant. So anyway, it's been great to have you on the show, Dave.
Been great.
And thanks for the people who watched, however briefly, and thanks to all the people who watched the replay on YouTube, LinkedIn, and wherever else we have it, Facebook. So thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.
See you next week. Bye. Thanks, Dave.
Brilliant.
This is what God requires.